What's good, everybody? It's your boy, the Q-Tip, and we're back with another video. Yes, I'm in the same get up, same spot, same setup. But make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I have posted my top 10 women's college basketball rankings every week, every Monday. And somebody commented yesterday, and some people have been commenting, and this is not a bad thing at all. People have been commenting that Texas should be number one. And I don't necessarily disagree, but it's hard for me to take the team that won the championship last year, that's number one, that hasn't lost, and move them down to 2. But I will say Texas has a chance of doing that whether or not UConn loses. And that's not to say that UConn's strength of schedule isn't good, because it is, but Texas is just better. Like, the Richmond win is whatever. That was a home game. They beat Richmond. Richmond is not a bad team at all. I love Richmond. But UCLA and South Carolina back-to-back neutral site days, or back-to-back days on a neutral site. You literally can't get better wins than that. They were number 2 and number 3 when they beat them. They were the 4th ranked team in the country at that point. So if you think about it, they beat the teams that will be ranked number 1, or the 4 1 seeds in the March Madness tournament. They beat 2 of them, right? And then they beat North Carolina, who was ranked 11. They beat Baylor, who's ranked 13. They're going to have a huge opportunity in front of them to still end up being that number 1 overall seed and that number 1 seed, or number 1 ranking. Because, granted, they don't play a ton of teams over the next couple of weeks. They play, I guess that's Northwestern State. Can't tell you for sure. South Dakota State, which I love South Dakota State as well, but they're not going to be able to beat Texas. SCLA, can't tell you exactly what the Southeastern Louisiana, maybe. I'm not sure. Then they play Missouri. They play 14th ranked Mississippi. They play Auburn. And then January 11th, they play LSU at LSU. And they play South Carolina at South Carolina January 15th. If they run through those games, so that would make them 13-0, 14-0, 15-0, 16-0, 17-0, 18-0. If they go into those 2 games, 18-0, and win both of those, and they go 20-0 after beating LSU at LSU, South Carolina at LSU or at South Carolina and at a neutral site, and they beat UCLA, they would have to be the number 1 team at that point. And it's not to say, again, this is not to say that UConn is not going to play good teams, because they still have Iowa on their schedule, they still have Notre Dame, and they still have Tennessee. But they haven't played a top 5 team. Now, Michigan has been ranked 6th for the past couple of weeks, so they're like the next team out, and that was a great game. So it's not to take any credit away from UConn. I'm literally a UConn fan. I'm not taking any credit away. I'm just saying, if Texas goes 20-0, beating LSU and South Carolina on the road, back-to-back games, 4 days apart, it'll be really, really hard to not put them number 1. You know what I mean? And then they play Texas A&M, Arkansas, Florida. Then they play Oklahoma, LSU, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. Their next 5. If they go, and I'm not saying that Texas is going to run through these. I'm just saying, hypothetically, if they do, this is how they take that number 1 spot. Because there's just no way. There's no way that Texas runs the gauntlet of the SEC. If both Texas and, this is basically what I'm saying, if both Texas and UConn end up undefeated at the end of conference play, Texas would be the number 1 team. Because they would have gone through a tougher schedule. Just simple as that. It's not, UConn doesn't schedule, because they've played UCLA, they've played South Carolina in past years. They played, USC was not supposed to be the game that it was. If Juju Watkins, that's a different game. Notre Dame was supposed to lose all the players that they lost. That'd be a different game. It is what it is. But in terms of conference play and the teams that they're going to have to go through, they're going to have to go through so many ranked teams. If they finish the season undefeated, which I don't think they'll do, because that's really, really difficult to do. To win every single game in the SEC would be nuts. But if they did, they'd have to be the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. And I think even if they lost in the SEC tournament, I would still put them maybe as the number 1 overall seed. And again, that's not a slight to UConn, because UConn has looked, I still think UConn is the best team this season. I still think if Texas and UConn played, I think UConn wins, but I think it's a really, 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 I mean, it's literally like a back and forth. Like, it's a 50-50. Both teams would have to play phenomenal to beat the other team. But, yeah, man, if they go into March 1st and they're undefeated, there's no way that they're not the number one ranked team. And they've been playing without Aaliyah Crump, Brianna Preston, what's the transfer's name? Ashton Judd. Ashton Judd hasn't played the whole season, but they've been playing without Brianna Preston and Aaliyah Crump since the UCLA, South Carolina games, and they've still handled business. Obviously, some of the games in there are not huge games, but they beat UNC and they beat Baylor without a lot of their depth pieces. So if they could get those depth pieces back for those bigger games, they have a great chance. I mean, this isn't to say that they can't beat LSU and they can't beat South Carolina, because they can beat LSU. We've already seen them beat South Carolina. They can beat Oklahoma. They can beat... I don't know if they'll beat LSU twice. That's the thing. Is beating LSU twice is kind of tough. Kentucky, Vanderbilt, all those games are quote-unquote winnable on paper. But to go out there and do that, like to go out there and go undefeated the whole season while playing in the SEC and playing UCLA and South Carolina in the non-conference, playing Baylor, playing North Carolina. I'm just saying, bro, that would change a lot. Like, they would have to be ranked number one at that point. And UConn, like I said, they still have some good games on their schedule, but playing in the Big East does them a disservice in this portion of it, because I think even if they were in the Big 10, if they were in the Big 12, if they're in the ACC, there's probably still a really good chance they go undefeated. Now, granted, they would have to play teams like Michigan potentially twice. They'd have to play a UCLA at least once. So, not saying that they would just run through those teams, because I absolutely do not think that. But if they were in those conferences, it'd be easier for them to be like, all right, well, if we go undefeated, we stay number one the whole time. But them going undefeated this year, if Texas also goes undefeated, doesn't necessarily mean that they stay number one because they're defending champs. I think you would have to give that credit. You would have to give that nod to Texas, because they've played better teams. They have more quality wins than UConn would. But that's a lot easier said than done. Like, I would not bet. Like, if I had to bet, I would bet that Texas does not go undefeated, because that's just too many teams to go through to try to go undefeated. I don't even know if they get to like 22-0. Like, that's just an unreal gauntlet. And then at like not even just the LSU and South Carolina back to back, the 5 straight of like LSU, like Oklahoma, LSU, Vandy, like that's a crazy schedule right there. But this is just me saying, like, Texas is as good as advertised. They are, I think, one of the 2 best teams in the country. I think at this point, the 2 best teams in the country are UConn and Texas. I think South Carolina and UCLA both have things that they want to work on, and that's okay, because it's still December, and you still have time to work on those things. And most teams in their conference, they'll still be able to beat, whether or not they're playing at their best, but there are some teams that they're going to have to be a lot better for. UCLA is going to have to be their best version to beat Michigan. South Carolina is going to have to be their best version to beat LSU, their best version to beat Oklahoma, their best version to beat Texas. And I think Texas is already as close as you can be to that in December. And I think UConn is the same way. Now, that's not to say either of these teams are perfect and that they can't lose or anything like that, because any given day, anything can happen in basketball. So, yeah. But that's really all I wanted to talk about. I wanted to let it be known that there is a way for Texas to become the number 1 seed or the number 1 ranking without UConn having to lose. Like, it's not just like, oh, UConn hasn't lost, so they're the number 1 every time. No, if Texas rattles off those wins against South Carolina and LSU back to back, they're the number 1 team until they lose. And if they don't lose, they stay number 1. It just is what it is. Like, you gotta reward merit as well. Like, you can't just say like, oh, they won the championship last year. It's a different team than last year. Like, you give them the credit, you give them that 1 spot because they haven't lost and they are the defending champions. But it's also, if your schedule doesn't look like theirs in terms of conference play, they got to get that nod. So that's really all I wanted to say. Shout out to Texas, shout out to UConn, shout out to all the top teams in the country because they're all playing really good basketball. And I can't wait to see the SEC SEC conference play start because I can't wait to see how those games play out, how these teams match up against each other. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and tap in with everything else that we're doing over here. Thank you.